Well, Nathan, big congratulations on a couple of things. First of all, you just launched your book, Freedom, How to Lose It and How to Fight Back. And that's frankly a question that a lot of people in the world are asking right now. So I'm very excited to talk to you about this. And secondly, you had the opportunity to bring up the reality for democracy in the world and specifically for Hong Kong at the Summit for Democracy recently. So, bringing a voice to Hong Kong again, which doesn't get nearly enough coverage. I think that's very important.
Thank you so much. For me, it meant a lot for me that I had the opportunity to speak at the Summit for Democracy. It's a summit that gathers 110 countries and regions, and each of the countries' leaders were paying attention to the speakers. And I was very privileged that I had the opportunity to have one of the two intersection remarks sharing the platform with Venezuela's President Guaido, and to talk about my struggle for Hong Kong, and also the implication of Hong Kong erosion of freedom to the world. So this is a good opportunity for me. I hope that I deliver my message well.
Well, and frankly, what you spoke about, it was, almost like a kind of a synopsis of the book there, right? We've had this situation where the national security law came in, and a lot of people kind of watching from outside saw this dramatic curtailing of freedom in Hong Kong. But this has actually been happening for quite a while longer. Like even back in 2019, before the national security law, I had interviewed Benny Tai, the constitutional lawyer who you mentioned in the speech. But today, if I did that with anybody, they would go to jail, and I would probably go to jail if I ever showed up in Hong Kong.
Yeah, absolutely. The deterioration of Hong Kong's freedom has been ongoing for the past years, but we've come to a going down off from the cliff in June 2020 when the national security law came in place. So for me, I in the book Freedom, I narrated my political journey for the past 7 years, where I was from a student protest leader to the youngest elected legislator in Hong Kong, and I was disqualified, became an inmate, and also becoming an exiled activist. All these changes actually embodies a set of suppression in Hong Kong and reaffirming the erosion of freedom. So for me, it is the decline of democracy and the rise of authoritarianism is not an abstract theory. It's a painful and personal story. And from these stories of mine, we could really see the side of Hong Kong and also understanding more about how an authoritarian or even totalitarian regime could erode once praised as the freest city in Asia.
This has been happening for a while, this erosion of freedoms. But do you remember the first moment where you thought to yourself, okay, wait a sec, something has really gone wrong here, and it awakened you? Do you remember this?
Yeah, and I think the story I depict in Freedom actually go a little bit longer. It started with for me, the very first time that I was going across the border from mainland China to Hong Kong. And back then, I remember that my mom had to do something, paperwork in the border, and I was 6. And she stuffed 2 bills to me. One is renminbi, which is the currency used in mainland China, and the other is Hong Kong dollars. And that was the time I realized that there are differences in the system of Hong Kong and the system of China. And to the later stage of my life, of course, I realized that the differences are much larger than currencies. They are like different sets of way of life, different set of understanding the government and their relationship with the people, and also the understanding of rule of law and how the government is held accountable by the people. And these things are crucial for Hong Kong. And if we're talking about Hong Kong becoming a strange city, becoming a just ordinary Chinese city, it means that these differences are disappearing. And that's the least thing that we want to happen in Hong Kong.
Here's the thing, right? With something like Freedom, And this has been, my parents escaped from communist Poland in the 70s. They were looking for freedom, right, when they came to North America. But in a country that's been free, or a place, Hong Kong, that's been free, it's almost sort of hard to see the erosion to freedoms before it's too late for many people. So the people that are kind of noticing it early are rare, and they're trying to say something, but often aren't listened to, right?
Yeah, well, there has been a lot of people trying to protest for the past decades, but it was really until 2014, 2019 that the protest movement amassed so much popular support. Maybe these people, when they protest earlier, things could change, but history cannot repeat. And for us, it is what's most important is, from our experience, we can remind the rest of the world that the rise of authoritarian power is literally one of the largest crises that we are facing. The world had been really complacent towards the rise of China. We've opened up ourselves to them, including them in WTO, including them in all the international system. But we have not developed any mechanism to hold them accountable. It's just like we're inviting a wolf into the house. We are hoping that they will behave themselves, even though it's unlikely. And when it really hurting the others, we simply don't have any tools to control them. And that is what's happening for the past 2 decades. So when we talk about democratic recession, which is one of the most important notion in this Summer for Democracy, we must take the rise of authoritarianism in account and try to do something to counter it.
Well, so actually this reminds me of something that you said that I just noted. And you said, our institutions are losing their ability to persuade us that a liberal international order will also prevail. Wow.
Yeah, I think it is not only a theory, but if you go down to the street and then ask young people whether they believe in democracy, whether they will believe that democratic values will last and the world is walking towards a more democratic way. I think if you ask people in the 80s and if you ask people today, they would give completely different answers. For now, there's a full of pessimistic prediction towards the world. People are thinking that, the world's not going to be better. We've got climate change issue, and for now we've got pandemic, and we've got a rise of authoritarianism, and democracy is seemingly not able to say that we can definitely change the tides and do better, and we can hold the human rights perpetrators accountable. So I think it is really a wake-up call. What's happening in Hong Kong, what's happening in Xinjiang, and the rest of China is a wake-up call to the world that we must see it as our existential crisis. It is not just about helping people in Hong Kong or helping people in Xinjiang. It's about how we can defend democracy, the system that we believe among all the other systems, at least is the least worst one.
No, absolutely. And so here's the thing, right? I think Americans, perhaps naively, right, in their sort of, let's call it extreme engagement with the Chinese regime, believed they could somehow change China. It would become a democracy in their minds. I mean, I've heard this from so many people who no longer believe this to be true, lawmakers and so forth, right? But it seems like it actually went the other way. And a number of people have told me this too. What are your thoughts on that?
The appeasement and engagement strategy failed, obviously, when the world was predicting that China would step into classic modernization theory by having large economy. You've got rise of middle class, and the middle class demanding rule of law, demanding private property, and the whole country is moving towards a liberalization in economy and political rights. It just has not realized, and China has been walking into complete opposite direction. These wealth they gathered, the technology, they are all actually helping China to become more authoritarian, or even to degree totalitarian. The Chinese Communist Party today is literally more technologically sophisticated than the one in 1984, the Orwellian states. And the world has not developed anything to hold them accountable. And we've been seeing change of attitude in recent 2 years after Hong Kong's protest, after the Xinjiang genocide issues broke out. But we are far from having enough coordinated pushback. So in the speech, in the remark of my Summer for Democracy participation, I really stressed the point that we should change and we should definitely be united to push back the authoritarian expansion from the Chinese Communist Party.
This is the thing, like there almost seems to be, I remember in 2009, okay, Thomas Friedman wrote this famous or infamous op-ed, okay, I think it was 2009, basically saying things like, you know, he was admiring the efficiency of how China could operate to get things done and so forth. And I kind of wonder sometimes if there isn't a little bit of that admiration when we see all the challenges of democracy up and down and so forth. And I'm wondering if, like, if you know, you think China may have changed us in that direction. Hey, look, there's something very, very attractive as being able to sort of affect change from the top, demand it, and make it happen, you know, almost instantly.